Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Petersen here on the Freedom Report podcast, owner of the LibertarianRepublic.com and LibertyViral.com, as well as a former presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Thank you very much for tuning in to my live stream tonight. And last night's show stirred up such a hornet's nest, and so many people were demanding that I defend my positions on globalization and globalism, especially in regards to immigration, that I decided to do this video, which today is five libertarian arguments for open borders. And so tonight we're going to be talking about what open borders is, what it's not, and the five best arguments that I could pull from my research today on why libertarians tend to favor open borders policies. And again, if you're the type of person who says, "Oh, I'm a libertarian except for your borders position," you sound just like the type of people who say, "I'm a libertarian except for legalization of drugs." Well, yeah, I'm a libertarian except for ending the Fed. No, at some point, you have to say, "Okay, I'm a conservative," right? Or, "Oh, okay, I'm a social democrat." And one thing that social democrats and conservatives tend to agree on is restricting immigration. Why? For different reasons. Usually it has to do with taking our jobs, some economic argument, or has to do with economic literacy. But today I've pulled some of the best sources that I can from the Cato Institute, from Reason Magazine, from some of the best libertarian minds to give you the five reasons why most libertarians agree that we do need to make a case for open borders. First of all, what does open borders mean? For most advocates, it doesn't mean that just anybody should be allowed in the country, no questions asked, okay? So take that off the table. What it does mean is that immigration should be based on the socioeconomic need of a country's residents, not the arbitrary whims of bureaucrats or the grand designs of social planners. This is chicadomia. This implies that the government has a legitimate role in keeping out foreigners who pose a genuine public health or safety threat to the country. Other than that, who brings whom into the country or for what reason it is none of the government's damn business. The government could reject those who fail a background check or who are afflicted with some dangerous contagious disease. But barring that, entry would be allowed. So let's hit number one. Most of the arguments against immigration will come down to the effect on the labor market. And this is a misconception that immigrants are turking your gerbs, right? Taking people's jobs. But even if the immigrants did take your job, think about this just from a logical perspective. Doesn't that say more about the overall American job experience or the talent pool or productivity here in the United States? Because if an immigrant could be hired over an American worker who's been living in the United States their whole life, it's not the immigrant's problem that they're a better choice for a certain employment opportunity. That's your problem. In effect, what I'm basically trying to say here is don't hate the player, hate the game. Because an immigrant is seizing an opportunity that an American doesn't want, that they're not jumping on, right? And perhaps these traveling folks are just seeing the American dream here, and basically maybe this is an incentive for Americans not to be lazy, because if you think perhaps, even if it's not true that they're taking your job because the economics and the economy is not a zero-sum game, well, then this should be an incentive for you to get off your white, lazy American butt and get the damn job. And listen to this. Economists unanimously agree that immigrants increase native earnings, so people like you and me, if we're American citizens, it increases our earnings from somewhere between $6 billion to $22 billion annually. The fact that immigrants are willing to move from their home country and take a huge risk with their future shows what kind of people that we're getting here. It's not like what Donald Trump says. They don't send their best, they're rapists, blah, 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 blah. Not true. Because think about the great risk and cost that it requires for immigrants to come here. The mobility of undocumented immigrants helps make the U.S. economy flow smoothly. And listen to this. The Cato Institute found that Arizona had a huge crackdown on undocumented aliens or paperless workers or undocumented, whatever you want to call them. I don't want to trigger Gary Johnson here. It hasn't resulted in more jobs for native-born industries such as construction and agriculture that Mexicans had previously occupied. So when Arizona cracked down on migrant labor, it didn't result in more jobs in industry or construction or agriculture coming about. So it didn't have the economic impact that they wanted. As a matter of fact, they've experienced a greater job loss in these industries relative to California and New Mexico, Gary Johnson's home state. In fact, there were fewer Americans employed in construction in Arizona in 2010 after it got tough in illegals than in 2006. Let me say this again. After Arizona got tough on illegals, they had fewer people employed in construction in Arizona. Now, the Kauffman Foundation, which is based here in Kansas City, my home city, calculated that nationwide immigrant-founded companies, now listen to this, this is when immigrants come here and they found companies, they produced $52 billion in sales and employed 450,000 workers in 2005. And listen to this, 25% of high-tech companies founded between 1995 and 2005 had at least one immigrant founder. Over 40% of companies on the 2010 Fortune 500 list were founded by immigrants. Highly educated immigrants obtain patents at double the rate of highly educated natives. Let me say that again. This is the economic argument. Highly educated immigrants obtain patents at double the rate of highly educated natives. All right. So I'm having my Marco Rubio moment here. It's live. What can I do? If I was doing the anti-State of the Union thing, I would have just taken the water and proudly taken a drink. Number 2, assimilation. All right, people worry about assimilation, but listen to this. Think about it. Surely, if our culture is so superior, aren't people going to want to immigrate and assimilate, right? If our Western civilization is why should we be afraid of being subsumed by cultures if ours is so superior? If Western civ and free markets are so powerful, why are we going to be worried about this substandard, pathetic latecomer to the scene of Abrahamic religions such as Islam, right? So let's worry about if we're worried about Muslims assimilating. Now listen to this. Many immigrants who come to the United States do assimilate into American culture. Now, this is a Pew Research poll. Listen to this. This is just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. A Pew Research poll found that 42% of adults in the United States have switched religions, okay? 18% of Indian Americans are Christians, okay? 18% of Indian Americans are Christians. But in India, only 3% of Indians are Christians, okay? 18% in the United States and 3% in their home country. So that sounds like assimilation to me. Irish Americans actually make up half of the Protestant population here in the United States, as opposed to them being majority Catholic in Europe. Now listen to this, Asian Americans, 42% of Asian Americans who are Christians that's much higher than in China or in their home countries, except for perhaps the Philippines. Listen, 42% of Asian Americans who are Christian is definitely much higher than in their home countries. Now listen to this, the more people immigrate, the more they assimilate at the expense of religions who dominate Asian countries. Now, let's talk about Muslims for a second, because of course Muslims, that's the big boogeyman of the day. We're terrified of Muslims coming here and not assimilating. But the Pew Research poll also found, very interesting, while 77% of Muslims in the United States remain Muslim, but in the West, listen to this, Pew Research found that they lose about a fourth every generation, okay? That doesn't sound like much. 77% sounds like, if you're having a 77% retainment rate, that sounds like quite a high amount, but that you're still losing a fourth of your entire culture there every generation. That means that less than half of the descendants of Islam will still be Muslims after just 3 generations. Now, the problem with Muslims in their countries is that they don't believe in separation of church and state, right? So, but how is that different from people here in the United States who don't believe in separation of church and state? Okay, we have our own problems with religious minorities here in the United States who want to try and force their theocracy on us here. So it's not worse when it comes from other countries. It's bad whenever anybody wants to be a theocrat, because the fear is that they will come here and try and institute Sharia law. Well, yeah, but nobody wants the Westboro Baptist Church to set policy for the U.S. government either. And when it comes to the will of an ethnic minority, that's just never going to be foisted on the citizens of the United States, because we have lots of anti-tyranny amendments built into our Constitution, such as the Second Amendment. Yeah. Moving on, number 3, great point. Now, this is going to be a triggering, so trigger warning, it's good for the women, it's good for the ladies. Immigration is good for women. Why? And here's the most sexist argument you can ever find. Economics is just sexist, I guess. Listen to this. The presence of low-skilled immigrants is especially good for women because it makes it possible for them to devote time to non-household chores. increasing their workforce participation. In fact, Boston University's Patricia Cortez found that metro areas with a large presence of low-skilled immigrants have lower prices for dry cleaning, child care, house cleaning, and yard care, which in turn translates into more hours spent on the job by highly educated women. Low-skilled immigration thus indirectly contributes to productivity growth by raising the effective supply of high-skilled labor, concludes UCLA's Gordon Hanson. So if you don't want to be stuck in the home doing these kinds of menial jobs that have traditionally been the role of women, and you want to get out there in the workforce, having a high immigrant population in your area is a good thing because dry cleaning costs less, child care costs less, and all of those roles, those menial tasks that females had been doing previously can now be taken over by the immigrant population, and we are better off because having more women in the workplace is a better thing, right? Doesn't everybody want to get more women involved in the workplace because women are highly effective workers? Aren't you, ladies? Aren't you? Yes, of course. So that's why we want to have a higher immigrant population, because it's going to lower the cost of those goods and services that women would have had to take care of on their own. Listen to this. We've done it before. We've done this before. Now think about this, right? Historically, we have had open immigration before, right? From the 1880s until 1927, we had a relatively open immigration system. In fact, it was very close to the type of policies that I was proposing while I ran for president of the United States, because immigrants don't just come here and consume resources, they also add productivity, right? Today, the amount of capital that's invested in a worker is 9 times greater than what it was in 1880. Consider this, it's also 8.5 times greater than it was in 1924. What does this mean? Okay, a worker's productivity rises when they have more capital to work with, and since their pay is tied to their productivity, workers today produce more and earn more than workers did entering our most open border era, the Ellis Island era. Right? So now that we have so much more capital, our workers are way more productive. So if we had an even more open borders style immigration policy like we did during the Ellis Island years, security check, disease check, done, then consider what kind of capital we might be able to produce if we had that more libertarian immigration. Now, the biggest boogeyman in the room, of course, is the welfare state, because even a conservative might argue, oh, well, but Milton Friedman said you can't have open borders in a welfare state. Well, yes and no, because actually, when you take a look at a lot of the data, and some of this data is coming straight from Texas, not just the Libertarian Cato Institute, but you'll find that in many cases that immigrant populations contribute more than they take in benefits, than they are fiscal drain. Listen to this. And sometimes you got to spend money to make money. So listen to this. People say that immigrants are going to flood the system and we're going to capsize public spending, but that argument doesn't hold water when you consider that immigrants actually tend to migrate to states with lower public spending, according to Dan Griswold of the Cato Institute. Listen to this. The 10 states with the largest percentage increase in foreign-born population between 2000 and 2009 spent far less on public assistance per capita in 2009 compared to the 10 states with the slowest growing foreign-born population. So it's interesting because if they're coming here to take welfare, well, why is it that they're immigrating to the states that have the lowest amount of public assistance? That doesn't seem to make sense. Also, and let's remember this, that when we're talking about welfare costs, what we're talking about are two things. One is educating the child, and two is the cost of something like emergency care. But think about this, Americans also use those emergency care programs, so they impose a cost to society as well. And nobody's going to argue that Americans should stop having kids just so you don't impose, so your little blubbery kids don't impose a cost to society, right? Nobody's going to tell Americans not to have children because every time you have a child, they're going to have to go to the emergency room, and I have to pay my tax dollars to take care of them as well. But while immigrants may impose a fiscal cost on welfare, that's balanced out with their economic contributions. And if you don't believe it, I mean, what can we say? What can I say? These are just the facts. This is the data and the statistics that's out there. So I'm sorry that I'm not confirming your biases, some of you ladies and gentlemen. I used to believe that kind of restrictionist, nativist, immigrant, anti-immigration rhetoric that was pushed on me when I grew up as well. Then I got out of the indoctrination of the left-right bubble and I started to actually take a look at the data and the research. This is how you become a libertarian, because you have to think. So think about this while you're thinking. They may impose a cost in welfare, right? A fiscal cost. But listen to this. The border state of Texas, God bless Texas, where the comptroller of Texas found that the benefits outweigh the costs. Here's the report. They found that workers may have cost the Treasury $4 million more than they paid in taxes. But without these workers, the labor market would have tightened, diminishing Texas's competitive edge and causing the state's economy to shrink 2.1%, which would be how much? $17.7 billion. Okay? I would take a $500 million loss for a $17 billion gain in a New York minute. Right? You got to spend money to make money. And finally, the Kenan Institute, private enterprise at the University of North Carolina, found their Hispanic immigrants, many of them are undocumented, may have imposed a $61 billion cost on the state budget, but that was nothing compared to the $90 billion in the gross state product that they consumed. So, fantastic research and results. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we need to see. We need to get the data out there. And we need to stop listening to people who are indoctrinating us and brainwashing us against the ideas of globalism, free market, international free trade, what do they call it? Liberal internationalism, which is truly libertarian internationalism. Because historically, globalism has always meant free trade. That has meant reduced barriers to trade, reduced restrictions to immigration, and that's libertarian. Nationalism, alt-righters, is not libertarian. Thank you very much for listening to this show today. I hope you guys will share this, but if you don't share it and you guys want to contribute to the libertarianrepublic.com, everybody says, hey Austin, you got these ads. Check this out, guys. Look at this beautiful website. Look at that. Do you see any ads on this website? No, there are no ads on this website. For $5 a month, you get an ad-free experience. That means all your listicles will be on one page. Everybody's like, oh, Austin is such clickbait. Well, we do the best in the business, ladies and gentlemen. Prison Planet people are going to freak out. Fluoride is actually safe. Yeah, I'm doing the anti-brainwashing, the anti-Prison Planet brainwashing going over here, trying to get you guys to wake up to the real New World Order. And speaking of, let's talk about the New World Order real quick before I go. But you guys, $5 a month, very simple. Cancel anytime, right there. Boom, and you're done. You can cancel anytime. $5 for a month or $55 for a year. And you help support libertarian journalism, and you get a little something out of it too. So I appreciate that. Also, I was going to tell you guys about the funny thing about all of these like conspiracy theorists and stuff who are attacking me and nationalists and stuff is that, again, that libertarianism is its own distinct philosophy and ideology. It's not conservatism and it's not liberalism and it's not paleoconservatism. It is its own distinct ideology that is focused on reducing the role of government. Nationalism is statism. Globalism is libertarianism, because what right does the government have to interfere with the free trade and movement of peoples and nations? That's the libertarian argument. If you don't like it, too bad. Facts are facts, and I'm going to stick to the facts. Thanks very much for watching the show. Don't forget to share, and have a beautiful day.